Thanks for joining us here at The Research Her, the show working to improve the health disparities for women of color, one topic at a time. And I am Alicia. I'm here learning and growing with you as we research our way to wellness. So this weekend, I'm sitting up there, preparing for another episode of The Research Her, listening to Side Hustle Pro. Nothing new about, well, actually, I was about to say it's nothing new about that. Actually, it is. If you don't know, Side Hustle Pro is a podcast that highlights women of color who have scaled their businesses from passion project to profitable business. And normally she will only post on Wednesdays, but lately she's been giving us these bonuses on Fridays, and I'm loving it. So this weekend I'm listening to an episode, and she is interviewing Katonya Breaux, who is the founder of Unsun, which is a company that produces mineral sunscreen versus sunscreen that has all these chemicals in it. And I highly suggest going to listen to it. It was very inspirational for me. The direct link to that episode is in the show notes. But what really stood out with me was how she discussed why the product came about. Now, I won't go too much into the story. Essentially, she needed sunscreen. All the products that she was using was making her eyes water. And I can't remember if she said it was irritating her skin, but she definitely knew something was wrong. Listening to her, I was thinking about the science that I had read about different sunscreens and the chemicals that are in the sunscreens and how they affect us. And I know that this is the perfect time to talk about sunscreen. We're getting ready for the summer, getting ready for our vacations. I know that we're going to be out in the sun. As Black people, we tend to believe that we don't need sunscreen. I'm very familiar with growing up in summer camps and going on vacation with my family. And there have been times where family members won't wear sunscreen out in the sun. And I want to debunk the myth that because we have darker skin, we don't need sunscreens. Today, I will be talking about why we do need it in the first place, and also a little bit about the ingredients that we should avoid. Before we do that, let's highlight our researcher of the week. This week, we are highlighting Korie Grayson. She graduated from an HBCU, Norfolk State University, with a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry. She cold, y'all, where she was a member of multiple honor societies and organizations. During her undergraduate career, she volunteered as a tutor and with people with special needs. She was doing her work and her service, and she pledged Delta Sigma Theta. She continued on the work for a few years, then moved to start her graduate studies at Cornell University. She's currently a biomedical engineer Ph.D. candidate for Cornell University, although she does her research at Vanderbilt. I have yet to meet Korie, but I love her presence online. I love that she doesn't feel the need to use her platform to be a biomedical engineer, like quoting, I have air quotes up. She gives us a glimpse into the world of a relatable human, not just a scientist. She shows us that you can be a scientist, but you can be so much more than that. As a woman in STEM, and I just want to overemphasize this, we get told how we should be by the media. And it almost looks like an unattainable goal, because who wants to be all nerdy? And you know the image of scientists. Don't pretend like you don't know what the image of scientists looks like. She debunks that. I just went on a whole tangent. Let her tell us about her research, okay?
My research primarily focuses on prostate cancer. Prostate cancer is the second leading cause of death in U.S. men, and approximately 90% of all cancer-related deaths are due to metastasis, which is the spreading of cancer to other organs within the body. The 5-year survival rate of patients diagnosed at local and regional stages is greater than 99%, in contrast to distant stage or stage 4 metastatic prostate cancer, which dramatically drops to 30% at diagnosis. It is estimated that over 30,000 men will die from prostate cancer in 2019. It's important to me as an African American female because African American men have the highest prostate cancer incidence and mortality rates compared to men from any other racial or ethnic group in the U.S. Currently, metastatic prostate cancer is incurable. Hormone therapy and chemotherapy are the first treatment options given in order to prevent metastasis. However, once the cancer has reached an advanced stage and no longer responds to hormone therapy or chemotherapy, the treatment options are limited. Currently, I am focused on studying the landscape of leukocytes that infiltrate primary prostate tumors in mice. So let's break that down. What is a leukocyte? A leukocyte is a white blood cell, which is a part of your immune system that keeps you in good health and protects you from illnesses and diseases. They often circulate in blood and roam the body to look for any foreign invaders, such as bacteria, viruses, foreign objects, or anything that can harm your body. They traffic easily to tumors and cancer cells and try to destroy them in order to keep you healthy. Because tumor cells are tricky and they learn to avoid these processes and signals and these events that tell them to shut down, they will learn to suppress these immune cells that infiltrate these tumors and turn them from anti-tumor to pro-tumor. So what does that mean? These leukocytes will acquire this kind of split nature and will dramatically contribute to help growing the tumor. So I look at where in the tumor are these leukocytes actually going? Do they stay in the periphery? Do they infiltrate to the center? Which ones go where? If we can figure that out and to what extent and which ones are infiltrating, then we can specifically tailor therapies to target specific leukocytes or white blood cells, as well as to different regions of the tumor in order to mitigate primary tumor growth and prevent the spread of cancer. I am also studying a combination therapy with current chemotherapy drugs used to treat metastatic prostate cancer with a nanoscale therapeutic that our lab developed. It is lipid-based, so it's very similar to the components that make up our own cells that are within our body. So therefore, it is not recognized as much by the immune system as being foreign. But it has on it a very important protein called TRAIL. So what is TRAIL? TRAIL, which stands for TNF-related apoptosis-inducing ligand, try to say that 5 times, is a protein that selectively kills cancer cells while sparing normal cells. So this makes it a very attractive agent for killing and inducing apoptosis in cancer cells. So with our research, we have found that it's very potent in targeting CTCs, which are circulating tumor cells in blood, and also reducing primary tumor growth in mice. However, some cells are still pretty resistant to TRAIL. Prostate cancer cells that I study are included. Therefore, I'm combining the chemotherapeutic drugs used in clinic along with our TRAIL liposome therapy to sensitize TRAIL-resistant cancer cells and see the amount of apoptosis or killing that occurs, as well as what mechanism is occurring that makes this combination treatment work so well.
I appreciate you so much, Korie, for sharing your research with us. All of her information is in the show notes. If you want to be highlighted on the show, it's very easy. Just send me an email at hitusup@theresearcher.com and I'll send you the information and you can be featured. Now to the science. So the sun is not just hot, and there are benefits to getting sunlight. So what is going on is that the sun is constantly emitting tons of electromagnetic waves, which is a fancy word for sunlight. Sunlight is absorbed by a molecule on the skin, which is fat soluble, and it triggers a chain of chemical reactions. Now, that molecule is converted into different structures on the skin, then it goes to the liver, then it goes to the kidney, and in each step, it is going through the different processes of becoming vitamin D that the body can then use, and we absorb it. And the efficiency of this chain of reactions is dependent on how much melanin you have in your skin. Now, melanin competes with the vitamin D precursor for the sunlight, meaning that melanin is a natural cock block. And it keeps the process of going from that vitamin D precursor to vitamin D. The less melanin that someone has, the faster this process happens. So it's no melanin competing for the sun rays, meaning that, like, okay, this molecule absorbs the sunlight and it goes through the process of becoming vitamin D. You have more access to vitamin D. And then the more melanin that you have, the slower the process, because your melanin is like, boom, not your girl, not yours. This me, okay? And it's harder to produce that vitamin D. That's why it's common for people with darker skin to be vitamin D deficient. People with less melanin need up to like 30 minutes of time in the sun, whereas people with more melanin may need a little bit more time than that. And you want the vitamin D from the sun because we don't get an adequate amount of vitamin D in our diet. And another thing to consider is that your weight can also affect how well you produce and have accessible vitamin D. The molecules that are leading this whole process are fat soluble. So somewhere along the process, the molecule that is becoming vitamin D, it can end up being absorbed by the body's natural fats and make it harder for there to either be the production or vitamin D getting actually into the bloodstream. And that's the benefit of sunlight, is you get vitamin D from it. However, this same sunlight that helps process vitamin D is harmful to us. The sun is emitting UV rays, and UV rays can lead to cells dying, skin aging, wrinkles, all that DNA damage, inflammatory response, which can then lead to skin cancer.
And melanin does not interfere with this chain of reactions.
Now, what's happening is the light, it hits the cells and it just causes a different set of chemical reaction, causing all these damages that I mentioned. Now, these reactions are why we do want to wear sunscreens. So sunscreens are just lotion with a class of active ingredients called UV filters. And it does exactly what the name suggests that it says. A UV filter reflects or absorbs the sunlight so that it does not reach the skin. Now, the challenge with a lot of these chemicals is that they have known adverse effects in the body. Some of those common chemicals that have been studied are insolazole and octinoxate. They have been studied as endocrine disruptors, and they're commonly thrown into sunscreens. If you don't know what an endocrine disruptor is, you want to go back to episode 8 of the Research Her, where we talk about endocrine disruptors and the chemicals that are in skincare products. We are still learning about this class of chemicals. The studies that are out today say that they can cause allergies and even asthma-like symptoms. And I go into a lot more detail in episode 8, so please go check it out. Chemicals like octinoxate has been actually found to cause skin damage on its own. Although we are blocking the sun rays, this chemical has been studied and is believed to damage our skin, which we're putting this chemical on our skin. Okay, whatever. Octinoxate was actually on the list of chemicals to avoid if you checked out the Clean Cosmetics checklist that I put out for episode 8. Another thing that is kind of off topic, but I think is interesting, is we tend to use these products at the beach. And we put on sunscreens, then we hop in the beach water. But these sunscreens, the chemicals, have been found to kill coral. You swim in the water, those chemicals are now in the water, they go to the coral, and the chemicals are absorbed by the coral, and they starve this beautiful, beautiful creature of all its nutrients, and they die. Sad, right? I feel weird about the fact that this organism is dying off of this particular chemical and we are just throwing it on our skin all willy-nilly. And also, like we mentioned, a lot of these chemicals we're putting on our skin are being absorbed into the body. and they're being processed and broken down, and that causes adverse health effects as well. Now, one way for us to get a nice dose of our UV filters while still being a little more cautious is to use UV filters that are mineral-based. Zinc and titanium oxide are what are looking the most promising right now. And these are what you call inorganic molecules, which are not absorbed by the skin. So they essentially stay surface level, and they're blocking out those UV rays. They are definitely looking to be a more health cautious option to the chemicals that are typically used. Some studies do show that the mineral UV filters can be harmful if they are inhaled. So just be cautious of that. So our takeaways for this episode is 1, go buy you some Unsun. It's a Black-owned business and it's toxin-free sunscreen. 2, avoid spray sunscreens, period, because the aerosols in itself is an endocrine disruptor, regardless of what chemical is in it. Or you also have the option of wearing a face mask as you put on your spray sunscreen. Whatever floats your boat. 3, save yourself and save the planet by looking for these natural sunscreens that don't have the chemicals mentioned. The names of these different chemicals will be in the show notes. I will say, though, it is more important to use sunscreen than to avoid these chemicals based on a contemporary review. Science is still trying to learn more about it, all of the health effects, and whether it's truly, truly terrible for us and how does it affect us and for how long. But for now, better to wear the sunscreen than to be like, oh, it got the chemicals, so I'm going to avoid it. But remember, sunlight is still important for getting your vitamin D in. Just swim with caution. And that's it for today. Thank you for listening to an episode of the podcast. If you want to connect with me, I am the researcher at all the socials, so Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Feedback is much appreciated, and I'll talk to you next week.